The Order 1886. I'll be honest, I didn't expect to be in the position I currently am with this game. I was of course fully expecting the gaming press to come out and proclaim The Order to be another victory for the new gaming renaissance of games that would rather not really be games. I was fully prepared to have to swoop in dashing as usual and set the record straight here, that trying to pitch low frame rates and awkward ugly aspect ratios as features or artistic choices is absolute bollocks, when the devs' real intentions are to just squeeze high graphical output out of a system that can't really handle it, or how placing gameplay below story and visuals is a recipe for creating a very bland and boring derivative game. But lo and behold, The Order 1886 is actually so bad, so absolutely so crushingly boring, that not even the critics liked it. And that puts me in an awkward position, because now instead of saying that a mediocre game I was expecting to get praise is just that, mediocre, it turns out a game everybody thinks is mediocre is a game I have to say is absolutely terrible. I don't deny that a lot of talented people probably worked on this game. I mean, it's not buggy, it works, the art is nice looking, and making models and textures this good is a feat far out of my reach. But holy shit, as a self-satisfied prickazoid with a YouTube channel, I have to say this has to be one of the most mechanically shallow games I've touched in years. I have played Nintendo Wii beat-em-ups with waggle controls that are far deeper than this game. It is almost ludicrous how bare bones of an experience The Order 1886 truly is, and as I sit here and write this now, I have a hard time coming up with all that much to actually say. It's clear from the start the devs wanted to put most of their time and effort into the story, which is why it's surprising to see it still be one of the most unengaging aspects of the title, a statement that will sound way more believable now if I bring it up before discussing the gameplay. It's alternate history 1886, and Galahad, our protagonist, is a sort of old school elite immortal cop, who spends most of his days shooting the rebel underclass so they don't get any funny ideas about leaving their ghettos, I guess. You can tell who the bad guys are because they don't have refined southern accents, and they all tend to be slumming it in grimy, underdeveloped working-class neighborhoods as opposed to our hero's swag-ass uptown Parliament digs. The Order 1886? More like the Order 1986, am I right? I'm probably not spoiling much when I say that things in this battle of the powerful super electricity knights, aka the Man, versus these impoverished rebels isn't completely clear-cut, and as a result, Galahad will have to entangle a very simple yet needlessly convolutedly exposited set of conspiracies. On that front, we get a lot of scenes of people talking about super serious political stuff in endless unskippable cutscenes. Now don't get me wrong, I don't loathe games with heavy narrative leanings. They may not be my favorites, but one thing they do have to do to keep my attention is at least, you know, be good in that regards. And Order really drops the ball by taking a novel alternate history setup and somehow making it incredibly boring by mostly featuring characters talking in rooms at each other. It also lacks any real standout character. Galahad's a bore, and aside from one cheeky Frenchman on the team that doesn't show up nearly enough, there's nobody in this filmic story experience I really cared about. You might be thinking, oh wow, that sounds pretty bad. Not being able to skip cutscenes is going to make this game quite the chore if the story isn't really that good. And it kinda does, but on the bright side, considering the amount of other content on offer, if you could skip the cutscenes, it would probably turn a 6-hour game into about a 3-hour one. This also would be the case if the player wasn't forced to move like a snail for half the game. Okay, let's play The Order, woo, let's go! Walking... Still walking... More walking. Oh my god. Finally we're running. Okay, let's get down to business. This is gonna be good. I hate video games. I've already shown my disdain in the past for forced walking sections in video games, but The Order probably takes the cake for the most walking I have ever done in a game before. You'll spend at least half of this game slowly plodding through environments, begging it to let you move faster. Sometimes the L3 button will allow Galahad to do a little trot, but most of the time it won't. You'll be stuck hammering away at that button as the reasons you even partake in this expensive, time-consuming hobby start to evaporate from your conscious mind. If deciding when you can move at a given speed seems like overkill, well, you'll be happy to learn that most abilities that can be performed in The Order come and go at their leisure as well. Dodging can be done, and only be done, if a prompt appears next to Galahad, and crouching is all but restricted to gluing oneself to cover. If you couldn't tell from looking at the footage, The Order is supposed to be a third-person shooter. One of the most bare-bones, unimaginative, linear third-person shooters ever conceived, but it is a functional one at least. You shoot things, sometimes you shoot things behind cover, sometimes if the game is really extreme, you'll be shooting things without cover. I struggle to continue this gameplay dissection because I kind of did it already. Just then. I don't even know why I'm here. Oh, the player can also hold down a button that just makes Galahad shoot the enemies by himself, in case you were tired of doing the only part of the game that's actually kind of like a game and you want to get back to more fun activities like filing taxes, or sitting around waiting for time itself to consume your expiring mortal body. Well, other than the shooting, there are a couple of bits where you do some exciting parkour, which actually just involves holding forward for a while. Or segments where the game breaks the mold with some stealth sections in which the only mechanic is move and maybe shoot if you're lucky, where of course death is instant if the player is discovered. If you were hoping that the imaginative locales presented would spice things up, guess again, because all the environments are extremely static and we might as well be fighting in the MGS2 VR missions for all the difference the set dressing makes. The combat kind of comes alive a bit right at the end when the difficulty ramps up by having the player contend with large enemy waves, but the game finishes straight after that, so it doesn't last long. The AI isn't brilliant anyway though, so it wasn't like I felt like I was outsmarting a horde of able killers as much as some drunk angry men. It's really hard for me to put into words just how nothing this combat is. It is every third-person shooter from the last 8 years minus any mechanic those games had other than insta-kill, head bonk, cover, aim, and shoot. Worst of all, the extreme railroading the game does to keep the player in line, constantly cutting back to cutscenes or removing the player's abilities when it so pleases, having to wait around for doors to become operable or ledges to become jumpable. It makes the title feel extremely uneven and badly paced. Rarely does it feel like the player is given a big juicy slice of gameplay before it's interrupted or pushed to the side for boring mandatory investigation sequences where Galahad slowly walks around a room looking for a piece of paper. That may or may not be of interest to the story, but always without fail is very hard to read without peering at them 3 inches away from the monitor. All the Order really has is its somewhat confusing, way too self-serious story and some very pretty visuals. I mean, seriously, I may not be a fan of the color grading, but there is no denying visually the game was combed for any imperfection, and it shows. So yeah, that's about all there is to say. I've criticized a lot of games, and don't misconstrue me not having much to say about The Order as it's somehow being superior to games I've managed to rant about for much longer. Because for me to criticize things, there has to be things to criticize. You know, commonplace features to talk about like new mechanics, level design, real boss fights, upgrade systems, post-game content. I finished the game. Guess I'll check the extras to see what else there is to see. Oh. A game actually has to have these things for me to get annoyed at them if they're done badly, but The Order is so bare bones it can't even be talked about using the basic levels of analysis I use to discuss the average title, which puts it far below anything I've really talked about before. I don't think The Order is a game that lacked care. I'm sure a lot of hard work and skill was put into crafting its detailed aesthetics and animations, so it's easy to see why people might be seeing it as a bit harsh for everybody to be bashing the title so severely at the moment. But I think people are scared that this is the kind of design next-gen games might want to be pushing, considering how prominent of a position atop the exclusive next-gen pedestal The Order's been placed. Barely interactive, quick-time event-driven experiences with nothing more than shooting down a hallway as a catalyst for any kind of real uninterrupted gameplay. Constantly I was playing The Order and seeing in my head gameplay scenarios that would have taken advantage of the game world introduced here in far more exciting ways. I'm looking at these awesome balloons and you're telling me we couldn't have had some sick-ass balloon fights, only for the title to turn around and tell me to walk down another hall and fire away at stop-and-pop enemies as its dull, generic soundtrack drums away in the background. That's of course until the next cutscene or walkie-talkie segment kicks in. Maybe some of the stuff I was imagining would have been possible if all the dev time and system resources didn't have to be allocated to the pretty visuals, which at the end of the day are going to age and probably not be all that impressive a few years from now. As a consumer, 50 quid for a 6-hour game, half of which is talking, half of which is gameplay a million other games do better, The Order's just impossible for me to recommend. I put up with a lot of unnecessary filler bullshit in a lot of games that I think some people don't really have a big deal with, but The Order 1886 is almost entirely composed of it, and it almost seems proud of that fact. This was not for me, and I was kinda asking for the hazing by playing the game after all I'd heard about it. But beneath it all, even underneath all the pretension and shallowness on display, I still saw a missed opportunity. And that doesn't make me angry, it just makes me sad. Hopefully next time the people at Ready at Dawn get to use their talent to realize that opportunity.